Hello,
Hello.
hello. I was watching the the countdown on the wrong screen. Glad I've been a better entry. Dmitry, it's so nice to see you here, my friend. How's your week been so far, man?
Thanks for having me. It's been very good so far. Pretty nice weather. I think I came back to Austria in the right time because it's very cold. Right now it's getting better. And yeah, I think it's a good time for Monday and really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what we're going to be doing here is really I want to start off with just getting to know you more. I know that I've got a bunch of awesome questions from the community, and I'm excited to start to break those down. But before we dive into the business and the solution and the technology, I want to hear more about the person behind it. And so, I guess Dmitry, as we're getting to know you here at this community, tell us more about like when you were a kid. I feel like you were something of a tinkerer. I don't know why. Just when I hear you right. So I'd love to know what was something that you created as a kid, something weird that you made for maybe it was a problem or just maybe it was just a toy that you created. But what was something that you built as a kid that I don't know, you think was pretty awesome?
Yeah, I think that that's true that I've been kind of a tinkerer, but I would consider myself more of a thinker like back then and throughout a huge piece of my career. I was always fascinated by math, and I was like having very good time reading math textbooks of my older sister. She was like 3 years older than me, and I was kind of curious to learn what's in there in this like mysterious books because there were like basically some drawings, some geometry classes, and yeah, I was just like trying to read it and trying to make sense out of it. And I don't know why, but somehow also big numbers caught my attention. So I have like sort of a passion to write down very, very, very big numbers. So and somehow, yeah, I so for example wrote down 1 and 10 zeros. Then I asked my dad, like, can you read this number? Okay, that's a billion. And then I put three numbers more, and then like, what's that? Like, quadrillion. And I kept adding the zeros, and at some point, no one could say like what this number is about. I was really obsessed. Like, the bigger the better. So,
That's amazing. And whenever you whenever you would ask your parents these questions, were they usually encouraging you to go deeper, or was it something where people did you find people's limits of how many questions you would ask?
um, yeah, actually, they were like really encouraging, and I think I started to do like preschool math and like all these extracurricular activities from the very early age. And yeah, I even tried to teach how to count my sort of classmates back when I was in the kindergarten. So I think, yeah, I'm really in like in many ways it's thanks to my parents that I'm right now and doing whatever I'm doing, because they actually really fostered like all my interests, and yeah, kind of fostered my interest in math, and then further on and like pursuing computer science and research at the same time. And they never said like, oh, that is not the way that you're doing, just like go ahead, yeah, follow your path.
Yeah. Well, that brings up one of the things I always like to hear a founder, and I guess a little bit something different than the elevator pitch. How would you describe who Subsquid helps and what Subsquid does for people to a child, to an 8-year old?
Would just help to bring the blockchain world closer. And I think that it's a like very huge mission to make this technology easier to comprehend, because like we all know like all these buzzwords like blockchain, crypto. Many people even use it on an everyday basis, but it's very difficult to actually get inside this tech. And there is a very popular trend right now, like learn how to code, and I think it's like very nice, and probably everyone should learn how to code at least in the very basic level. It should be taught at school. So we at Subsquid really lower the entry barrier for the developers to come into the blockchain world, because especially in Polkadot and Substrate, it's really daunting to start like a parachain and learn Rust. It's really difficult, but you can actually still make sense about the data and build really useful products on top of what is already there. So with Subsquid, we bring this data basically to the developers, to the like normal people, or not make the giga brains like Gavin of York.
Oh man, it really is next level. And
Yeah.
when I go through, without diving too much in the deep end, but the 2-layer architecture that you guys have and the technology that your core team has built, what I wonder then is, what's possible with all of this data. I mean, just it's like the numbers. We can take them and stretch them to impressive sizes. I'm sure you're someone who appreciates that infinity is just the beginning. There's so many more layers after that.
Yeah. You can always add in 3 more zeros, right?
So then whenever it comes down to describing then what can you do with data? Because even for some developers that I meet, maybe they're coming from the Web 2 front end world and they're mostly on experience and design side of things. What is the practical, I guess, function that you see as the value that's being produced by being able to go straight into creating solutions with data as opposed to dealing with all the messiness of code like you're describing?
Yeah. Everyone is actually telling us that data is the new oil, right? So, and whoever owns this data owns the world. Together with this maxim that the software is eating the world. And the beauty of blockchain is all this data is actually open to everyone. But it is open as long as you can actually decode this and get your grip on this data, right? So in particular, when we talk about social networks building on blockchains such as Subsocial, or just looking at the transactions and crowd loans, all this data is already there. You don't have to have any specific permissions or to be a Uber employee in order to get this data and actually play with it and get real insights about the actual users. So I think this is a completely different world we are entering compared to Web 2, where we were just spectators and you use Instagram, but you just see whatever you're allowed to see. You cannot really have any meaningful insights of what's going on. While in blockchain, everything is open and everything has its own right for this open share data. So it's really like a gold mine, and it belongs to everyone. I really find this fascinating.
Well, that is super interesting, because if everyone has access to it, but there's a lot of it and it's tough to decode.
Yeah, and that's why having a tool is essential, right?
It almost gives me the image of an archaeologist, where the jungles of the Amazon, they're available to most who are willing to go, but it's not the easiest to navigate. And there's entire cities lost to history deep into the jungle. And wow, I love asking that question from the perspective of, I guess, coming from my childhood self to describe these very technical things, because especially with, Subsquid and something like Substrate, where it's a very powerful modular framework that makes it easier to create blockchain solutions, yet it's still not necessarily easy. And so to have an entry point, a way to be able to on-ramp folks to creating instant value, I guess when it comes down to looking at where the industry is going now, and seeing as, you've got DeFi, NFT, identity IDs, I mean, all sorts of moving pieces. Where do you see it that there's the most value that excites you, that is data that's just not being used right now, that very well it could be reached with just a couple of steps with a system like this.
Yeah, indeed. And actually, by the way, do you know that there is actually such a term that like blockchain archaeology? So people actually do
I
dig.
haven't heard that. That's amazing, though. I need that
Yeah,
T-shirt.
yeah. Actually, people do dig into very ancient block
Amazing.
of Bitcoin, for example, to dig up some artifacts of the past. And for example, this is how some of these rare Pepe's NFTs were uncovered, I think, or like maybe but something related to NFTs. So it was like a very early experiment, and turns out that was like the very first pre-NFT in the world, and then like it came to attention of the crypto Twitter, and like everyone was super hyped about this. Yeah, and answering your question, actually, like everything that you mentioned is really excites me because we are currently at the very early stage. If we look at the dApps that are around, they are very basic in terms of the data flows. So, for example, if you look at, say, Uniswap or like DAX or everything that goes on DeFi, even the UI is very simple, right? You have just a swap button, and the data that you extract from the chain is not that complicated. In a sense, you just flip flop the values of some objects, and you don't do anything advanced. But I believe that the future is really closer to the Web2 world, but it's built on blockchain. Like to explain it, so sort of how many APIs you need to build a Facebook or like an Instagram or YouTube? Actually, really a lot, or like a single API, which is very complex because you have multiple windows, multiple buttons, everything is glued together through some kind of a backend or API. And building such systems on top of a blockchain data requires like a very powerful middleware for it. And I believe that Subsquid is, in this case, uniquely positioned because it actually grew up from as an internal project at Joystream. They are building a decentralized YouTube, and they knew from the very beginning that they need a tool that would allow them to support like hundreds of entities, like very complex UIs. And this is something that we don't really see right now because, as I said, currently the dApps are very simplistic, but I believe that the complexity is going to explode. And such complex and advanced dApps would require tools that are designed from the very beginning to be capable of very fast iteration times and like very specific development mindset. And this is how like Subsquid was built from the day zero, basically.
Yeah,
Back then
well,
it was Hydra framework.
so was it always that hybrid framework of that hybrid as an archive versus the, I guess, processor squids, or
It
hybrid
was,
as in something API related?
yeah, actually it was like a very, very early decision that
Hmm.
we've made because like the very first idea that you pursue, and this is something that all of the competitors are using, is that you just download data block by block from the chain. So
Yeah.
you don't need any intermediaries. There are like some there are definitely like quite a few benefits because this thing is pretty simple. You don't need anything else. You just have a node and you source this data directly. But if you want to support very complex APIs, you really need speed for your synchronization times because you have to add and remove data and fields in your API once in a while, and you don't really want to wait and resync everything from block zero every time. So that's why it was like a very natural decision to have a powerful pre-indexed node that would contain everything that your blockchain has and will simplify access to the very base level. Not to mention that was like a very hard back then to deal with substrate upgrades, changes in the data, and it's still kind of hard. And this pre-indexed archive node actually shields the developers from all the complexities of the substrate node itself. So you're communicating not with the node, but the archive node, and it simplifies things a lot, and it speeds up your development process a lot. And this is how like this two-tier infrastructure was born.
So you saw that from the beginning at Joystream, realizing that projects like Facebook, Instagram, they take a ton of APIs or a very complex API. And then I guess I wonder, and I may not be fully understanding the tech here, so yeah, please let me know if I'm misunderstanding something, but wouldn't someone do like a database, as an example, store it inside that database and then query from there? Is the difference that how many developers are excited to develop their own infrastructure of database and index and query engine and everything else, or is there some other benefit that you see?
Yeah, I mean, you mean why we kind of do something that like if other developers would like to try to build their own indexing and like database, or
Yeah, that's what I wonder. Like, what would be the alternative solution if, let's say, before Subsquid, somebody wanted to do this and they're thinking, okay, well, if I go from the archive node, there's going to be a level of slowness, and so would the solution be to make a database and that?
Yeah. I mean, prior to Hydra framework and before, there were definitely attempts to index data, because this is something inevitable whenever you start to building a dApp and UI for a dApp. You need to access this data, and it's virtually impossible to build anything meaningful without an intermediary indexing layer. But it turns out that even though there were like lots of attempts and you can do this, you very often need like a bespoke solution that you can reuse. And the more complex your API gets, the more features you need, the harder it becomes to maintain. So it becomes quite clear that at some point you really need like a dedicated team, like a separate project, to actually keep this afloat and make this as performant and as fast as possible. Because probably like a very good developer can write an indexing solution, like a very simple one, like in a week, I think. But it will be slow, it will be very poor in the feature set, and it will probably solve only like a very specific problem. But if you want to build like a YouTube or an Instagram, you really need something very powerful and very flexible, so that you can actually build this APIs as if you're an API factory, so you can just like stamp and change them.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that's really interesting to know, and this is coming from a layman's perspective, so I very well may miss some nuance on it, but it kind of reminds me of a marketing team or something where almost like a Mad Men era vibe comes in, and you might have your art team, and perhaps someone can draw a sketch here and there, but at some point you're going to need to have someone to put together a storyboard and someone who focuses on environment versus character, and then all of a sudden you have people that are specialized. And in this situation, a developer can hack something together, sure, in about a week, but really it's
all about specialization. Yeah, so
wow,
you have
that's a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, you have to separate things, right?
So then I wonder, because it's hard calling it even a data ocean, but just the ridiculous amount of blockchain data that's floating out there. And I mean, it's already, I think I saw a study that said something like 0.5% of data is effectively used within the enterprise environment. And the vast majority of it is maybe used for reporting or logging. So if we haven't even hit that, mass adoption, huge curve yet, do you see that this data problem, does it scale exponentially, or is that a linear growth, or how quickly does this become right now it's kind of like just an underutilized option to where it's a point that it's just not practical or feasible without a team? How do you see the growth of data, this complexity happening in blockchain?
I think that the main difference between this blockchain data and data stored at some closed warehouses and enterprises is that this data is open, so you actually have thousands of eyes looking into this data. So I don't think that any meaningful and useful piece will ever be missed, just because there are like so many people looking at different places and like doing it simultaneously. And as long as they have the right tools, they will actually extract this value. It's like an arbitrage bots, right? So whenever there is an opportunity to catch this, someone will do this, right? And it's just like how things work.
Yeah.
People will always extract this value because I mean it's sitting there. It's not the walled garden.
Well, I love that you bring up the value of a community, of the general crowd being able to find opportunities within what's publicly available. Because one of the things that I found very impressive about Subsquid, that really was probably the number one driver for me, that led me to this community, was seeing the way that your team had put together the gamified ambassador program, having the quest, putting together Abyss versus Sonar, and really thinking through how to create as much value for the community, the way that you thought about the people, while also creating a large technology. I'd love to jam with you and hear your thoughts a bit more on how you see community, because I guess starting off, I know we can get into the depths and complexity of DAOs, but that's all far off in the future anyways. It's all work in progress. So to start off though, what is it that I guess led you to put so much focus on investing in the community first?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and we are really proud of our community. And it's very important to uh, be like very personal in there and like to build this connection. And this is something that we like foster. Even our developers are like very open to the questions from our dev chat and like from the community. And I'm really happy. And I think having community is the major difference between a crypto startup and a Web2 startup. Let me explain why. So when you have like a normal company, usually you have shares, right? And you have shareholders. Um, and whenever someone say buys and sells and like markets and shields this project, the only beneficiary is the actual shareholders, right? So it doesn't really improve the product. So whenever you like you know simp for Elon or like post your Teslas, it doesn't really improve the quality of Teslas. While in a crypto startup, and especially like in a Web3 like Subsquid, having a community actually does improve the quality of the product eventually, because community like having community increases the price and increases the incentives for the node operators to run this. So having a community is actually the major factor which drives the adoption. Because if you don't have a community, even though you have very good project, no one will ever use it, and the token price will be so low that there will be no incentives to even run a node. So the community, even if they just are meme gods, meme lords, and I don't know, they just like to have fun on Twitter and Discord. They actually bring tremendous value to the project, because it's just like simply creates a lot of incentives for others to join it in different roles. And this is how crypto is really like democratic in terms of like its value, because you don't have to be a super giga brain developer in order to bring value to the project. Like even just like some random shit post or like a meme actually makes like really big impact.
Yeah, well, that definitely is how words get spread now in blockchain. So then it sounds like you're taking a fundamentals first approach and seeing if we want to be able to really create a feedback loop to make an excellent product and make sure the money trickles down for R&D into a better product, to invest in the community first. And it's clear you led that way. So you have a different way of doing things than what is out there usually. Would you mind, just for some of the newer folks who might see this video, what was your vision behind like Abyss versus Sonar, and how did you come up with, as a team, this idea to create this whole gamified experience? Because it's really innovative from what's currently out there in the marketplace.
Yeah, well, actually, that's definitely like a team effort. So I don't think there is like a single person behind everything. So it's always like a team brainstorming. But from the very beginning, it was clear that if we just like put some GitHub bounties, that will actually cut off a lot of people from our community and our project. And this is something that we don't want to do, because we know that like we want a lot of people involved, and we really love memes, and like we really think that having a Squid Squad army is actually the key to success. So at the same time, we know that there are like developers who really do writing code and like can tinker with the stuff, and it just came naturally that we need just different tracks so people excel at what they're good at, right? So that's that simple.
Well, I love the way the things that that I see the team attacking here, and the user experience and the gamification, and making sure to invest in the community first. It's being able to, I guess, lead the charge in as many ways as possible, because what I'm seeing is you're looking for different ways to create a feedback loop, to make it so that the community, the collective force, kind of like the archaeology example, if everybody could see everything, then it's easier to find those weird random places on Google Earth that how would any individual person find, but the collective can. So then if we're at this layer 0 level as Polkadot, just recently beginning to bud into layer 1s, and what we're kind of looking at is an optimization to the network and application layer within the growth of blockchain, all of which is still very new. I mean, then would you see that? What do you see as a growth of where application development goes for Subsquid? Is it something that, is it equivalent to like a Squarespace or a Wix.com for the Web 2 world? Or is this more like a Stripe? Or how would you compare if we were to look at the relative growth curve from Web 2 to Web 3?
You mean how would which company in Web 2 world I would compare Subsquid to, or?
Exactly, yeah. Looking at the market size, I guess that's entering as we grow into a larger mass adoption market.
I would probably say Firebase. So
Firebase.
for like non-devs, probably I should explain this. Firebase is basically this service which allows you to spin up a serverless API in seconds. So whenever you're building a mobile application or a web UI, you can just throw in some data in there, and you get something that you connect to in a second. So this is something that is not really visible for people who are just interacting with the products. So this is not like Apple or like Google style thing, but this actually like a very crucial infrastructure piece that powers all these websites that we're accustomed to. So yeah, I think that would be the closest
Firebase.
example.
But what's interesting about the Firebase example is the fact that it's serverless as a whole. It's been around for a while, but as of recently, it's everywhere. You can't get away from serverless programmers. There's people talking about upgrading to serverless. So I don't know. If I look at it, I'm seeing that was probably a maybe 3 to 5 year ish period when everything's really started going big. Would you say that's about right for the serverless boom, from no one talks of it to where now you can't turn a corner without it? Is that what you see coming in blockchain? Just because from the tech side, you seem real intuitive on it, but or do you see it that things are moving faster even than where the serverless boom came in?
Yeah, I think that we will actually see like a lot of development in terms of like how you actually interact with the data, but also uh, how you can like which data you can actually gather. Because right now, like take for example the graph. This is quite successful product, but it's like surprisingly limiting in what you can actually do with this. So first of all, you can only query a single blockchain at a time, say Ethereum. Second, everything is packed as a closed box. So whenever you want to have something extra that is not in there, you're at a loss. You cannot even uh, query the data if it is not in the standard way defined by the protocol developers. What I see here is that we're like expanding exponentially to the world where we have a lot of blockchains, but we also have a lot of off-chain data that we want to map into this, either through oracles, or you just don't care about oracles. You just want to know the price, right? And you just want to pull off a CoinGecko API. So we're going to the point where developers actually will go for the most open and permissive platform where they can actually bring together and mismatch whenever they want. And that's why we at Subsquid, like having the thesis in mind, decided to have like a um, very open platform, which doesn't limit the creativity of the developers, and we don't have any artificial borders around it.
Well, that's huge because I was thinking of this was before I was even in tech, but there's a digital marketing analysis software that it would aggregate all of these different all your social medias, whatever automation system you're using, whatever processing, like payment processing, and bring everything together. And I remember trying to talk to him on the phone, and they're like, "Do you have a technical background?" And of course, I don't at the time. I was a marketer, and I didn't understand exactly what they did, but I learned enough that was new. I want to connect a lot of things, and that's valuable. And it's interesting to see how that means that there's a very large non-technical audience that is actually being targeted here. But I guess the question that comes to my mind then, looking at that perspective of knowing that there's a lot of value in being able to connect different data sources, not just from one blockchain, but from on-chain, off-chain, different chains, parachains, all sorts of places together. But what is that difference between Oracle versus what we're doing here at Subsquid? Would you mind kind of clearing the line between those?
Yeah, great question. So oracles originally were invented as a means to bring outside world into the closed world of blockchain. So for example, if you have a smart contract, which is a program running inside blockchain, you need some input from the outside. For example, you need an input like what is the current price of Bitcoin. We are doing it inside out. So we are actually extracting the blockchain data and bring it to the outside world, because we basically look into the smart contract, see what's happening there, extract all these like internals, and convert it into something that the outside world can consume uh, in terms of the API. So we're actually like doing sort of a reverse thing to the oracles. At the same time, we can put this data together, and we can also bring in the data that is not originating from the blockchains, for example, or the CoinGecko price feed. So we can actually enrich this data in any imaginable way. So yeah, oracles are like very tangential to what we're doing, but they're definitely related.
Well, that's interesting. So it sounds like the oracles are going to be there to power a smart contract, which with what we're doing, it's more so going to be something that we're analyzing what's happening on all these smart contracts, which is nuanced in that they're not exactly the same. One wouldn't necessarily want to power a smart contract from a squid, if I'm understanding that right. At the same time, though, if you're an application that wants to better understand, I don't know, the performance of your smart contracts, figure out what kind of exploits may be happening, going back to MEV type situations, well, that's where it'd be very useful to be able to have some deep processing abilities to not only check out, well, what's happening between this date range versus a different date range and how those parameters changing, but how do we compare versus another chain, and to have some kind of a tracking mechanism that's maybe on a tripwire or some kind of error handling that's able to make sure that there's a warning sign that goes out if the warning goes or number goes off. Though I might just be looking at it more from an arbitrage standpoint. At the same point, though, I think that's where things start. Going back to that community, if there's a bunch of people looking at something, they're gonna find some exploits. They'll find some holes. Well, one of the things I wondered then, because APIs are one of those phrases that a lot of people say, and I remember even before getting into tech from the website development world, API is a word that's used really frequently. Yet, I think that a lot of people, kind of like oracles, it's used a lot, but not a whole lot of specificity on what that really means. So, when you describe an API, how do you describe it in a blockchain sense?
Well, I think that API on blockchain is not much different from any other kind of API. So maybe I can just explain, like, in a very simple terms, what the API is, right? So and why we actually care so much about APIs. So if you so the data is sent by humans and machines or like computers is sort of very different. We are very good at catching visual information. So whenever we go to say a website or like to other billboard, we actually want this information to be colored, to be structured in certain ways. So we have like different boxes and the different fields in there. So we as humans very good at comprehending visual data. But when you actually speak to a machine, you usually use a very standardized way. So for example, you type in something and like in a text field, right? Or you insert like any specific data and it should be in a very specific format. Otherwise, the computer just doesn't understand it. So the API, the way that it consumed by websites or like mobile apps is basically the same data as you see in the screen, but it is stripped off of any visual effects. It's just like the raw numbers that you actually see. So for example, whenever you log into your wallet and you see your balance, this is actually just a number that comes in. And then this number is decorated and colored on your device, on your app. So the process is that the iPhone, your iPhone, ingests this data in the form that it comprehends, and then it just makes it beautiful for you. So the API is like like a piping, and this grid lines coming to your house, and everything then is like decorated and like makes it beautiful, and light bulbs. This is something that you see on the screen.
Yeah, well, I love the way that you kind of took away the smoke and mirrors of when we see an application. We see the pretty side, we see the nice, elegant design. We click on a button and we expect it to instantly do something. Even a 2-second delay will be maddening, but you're kind of unpeeling what's really going on behind the scenes, because it sounds like what an API does is it's just delivering a number, and it's just getting that number from somewhere. And then there are developers, designers that are able to make that look pretty, and that's the apps everyone use. And so I guess before diving into the anatomy of an API, I guess I wanted to go back to what is Subsquid and why is it important? Why is it valuable? Because if we take a look at something like a Facebook, like an Instagram, where there are so many functions happening, and it requires just armies of APIs running. And to set those up individually, it's just the current solutions are just a bit cumbersome, unfortunately. And it's something where it allowed us to grow, but what's really needed is something that's customizable, that separates the storage component, the archives, and the processing where the actual queries occur. And that allows for a person without a lot of coding experience. They don't have to set everything up from scratch and then maintain it and update it and optimize it. Instead, they can pull that, whip out as many APIs as they could possibly need, teach about it, and now all of a sudden that's where we see new innovation come in.
Yeah. So there are like two major components here. The first is to actually extract this data and make it available for
that's right.
querying. So this is the part where we use Squid archives, and the developer actually tells how this data is extracted. And the second part is to actually make it queryable, because the blockchains, you can think of like a big storage, but the storage is very it's an awful for querying data. So it's like a very like a deck of cards, and you can only look at the upper card. And if you want, for example, if for example you have like a deck, and I ask you like how many jacks are in there, the only way to know it is just to open all of them one by one and count. So what Subsquid does, it's basically like transform this deck of cards into something that can answer this question instantly. So instead of like, what it does in the background, it does this like card flipping for you in the background, and pre-indexes, pre-calculates all the possible queries that you may ask about this, and then you can get this answer instantly. And this is what you do whenever you like log in into your wallet screen or like any other app.
Wow. And so then this leads me then to wondering, when we're looking at an application, where we're fueling the application with an API that's using the Subsquid technology, where does the Squid token factor into that to be able to empower and improve? Let's just start off with, what is that for then?
Yeah, like very nice question. So right now, we at Subsquid run the archive nodes by ourselves. And this is very good, and it works so far, but it is a single point of failure right now. So in a nutshell, Subsquid token is the way to eliminate our power altogether. And it's done through like a natural incentive program. So people who run these archives nodes on their own will get rewarded in the Subsquid token. And at the same time, developers and data consumers will have to stake Subsquid token to get access to this data. And it's not just, like bringing in the token just because we want to have a token. That's the main reason is that having natural incentives makes the network robust and anti-fragile, because whenever there is a demand and whenever there is like incentive to run a new node, people will just come because they're incentivized to get rewards, instead of like compared to say a Web2 company which just buys in their servers on their own. It's an open world and people just come in. And at the same time, like API developers and like data consumers, that they just go for the data they need, and they drive the price of SQD up because they actually need these tokens to stake it and to access this. So the final goal and the ultimate goal is to actually get rid of Subsquid Labs GmbH, which is currently in charge of the development. So everything is really full and controlled by the token and the natural incentives. So actually people, so it's basically autonomous. This is like this A from DAO from DAO comes in.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense why I guess taking it all the way back at the beginning of this journey and seeing how, when you're looking at this project, you had to invest in the community first. You needed to really think out, how to encourage and promote as much collaboration as possible, because in order for the product to work and to function in a manner that's decentralized, there has to be an incentive model built in. And so I guess then I wonder, when it comes to becoming a DAO, sure, that's several steps after everything moves forward. Then what key factors do you see can be optimized now, be worked on now to prepare the community, prepare for having as successful of a DAO as possible?
Well, of course, like the most and the only step is to actually build, like to have this community in the first place, right? So whenever you have people with aligned incentives and enough people who actually care about the project and see the value in it and like willing to contribute in it, this is like the first and the major step in creation of a DAO. And we, of course, do our best in order to keep people around and like reward them for like being here with us. So we gonna have NFTs with like a special perks with the TGE. We also have a lot of programs such as like Team Abyss and Team Sonar, like a lot of hackathons, and of course we have bounties on GitHub, so anyone can just come and grab them. So like building this like kind of swarm of ideas and people around is something that is foundational for building any DAO.
Yeah, well, it sounds like being able to encourage the community to take actions and really see themselves as that participating player, that's a
Yeah,
major part of
exactly.
it,
Yeah,
right?
basically they are like Subsquid team members. Yeah.
I mean, that's a beautiful leap to be able to start to calculate that from the beginning, because it is something where, looking at just blockchain as a whole, I've always been able to tell, like, in the sense of, what interested me the most about Subsquid is the way that the approach to the community is different. It seems authentic. It seems genuine. And it's, I guess I wonder, because I know it's a whole team that put this together, but from your perspective, where did the idea overall of, like, hey, we want to do this, but it didn't even come together as a brand yet? Like, of course you had a solution, you had a thing that could make, but why Subsquid? What did you see in that?
Yeah, so I remember that even before like we had any funding and just had this idea that this is like a very powerful product and idea that we're going to build. We were like brainstorming about the ideas, and yeah, somehow Subsquid really clicked because uh, squid is something that is very relatable, and I just personally like the how the Q letter is typed because of this like fancy tail that comes out of it.
It is awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's just like something that once you heard it, you never forget. So
Sticky.
yeah, this is what we want to do, and I actually love squids.
Yeah, I didn't have squid for the first time until, I guess, I was like 26 or so. It was so good. It was in Thailand. They grilled it like right in front of me, and I thought it was disgusting looking at first, seeing it. But then when oh yeah, it changed my life. Not a whole
Yeah,
lot of squid in Texas, so
pure protein, right?
well,
So
here we are nearing the end of our live. I guess before we go through a lightning round and knock through some of the last questions that we have from the community here. I don't think we'll be able to get to all of them, unfortunately, but for sure this is not going to be the last show that we're going to have, not the last time that we get in fun and talk with you. And in fact, we've got a whole lot of stuff that Massimo and David has been, well, cooking up and we'll be releasing shortly. But it's something where, Dmitry, before we go, what questions or what uh, concepts do you think that people perhaps could be looking at even closer, that you think are the more important questions to be asking when it comes to looking at a project like Subsquid?
oh, yeah, that's a tough one. I think that Yeah, definitely trying to tinker with something, like basically looking at a GitHub and trying to figure out how things work is something that I personally like relate a lot, and I think it always rewards like hundredfold, especially in crypto. So whenever you can figure something out, this gives you a tremendous edge. But what is more important is to be able to communicate and share your knowledge. That's, I think, something that really stands apart, because this is something that also makes you a lot more powerful, like in the space. Like one thing is look to figure out something on your own, and the other thing is to having a blog post or like Medium post or like Twitter thread. It instantly makes you like a reference point, and it's really like the easiest way to break through into crypto, and like the most valuable thing you can do as a community member. Like that's why we value so much our ambassadors, who are actually like scouts, and like this spread the word about Subsquid. So yeah, I think sharing is like the key thing that we should foster.
Share the journey.
Yeah.
I like it. Makes a lot of sense. It's funny. I'm just now realizing something similar on Twitter recently. There's a lot of people talking about what was that big move and sharing where everything comes from. Well, Dmitry, these have been awesome questions. Let's go through a couple of lightning round. So these are quick snap Q&As. Let's see where we've got them. All right. Let's see. So, we knocked out a lot of these. To be frank, you're ahead of the game here, Dmitry.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
so here's a fun one that we did not yet touch. We kind of did. Other platforms, other networks. What's in the works?
Yeah, it's sort of secret, but yeah, we are going after EVMs like big time. So we
Okay.
already support Moonbeam, Aster, Shidan, and Moonriver, but we do it from the substrate side, and they are basically substrate chains with EVM, but we're going to have full native EVM support for Ethereum and L2 on Ethereum. That's our goal for 2022.
Where it sounds like we're for sure going for other chains, and I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things people wonder about is are we going to be staying substrate forever? And yeah, not only are we already on EVMs, but going outside of it.
Yeah, I don't think there is like either or, right? Because actually it's like so intertwined right now, and like we see how Aster is going to the moon. So it's like so natural to expand to EVM rather than to any other substrates, because like this is actually where the real development happens, like on both chains, I believe.
Makes a lot of sense. And then how about the NFT? Of course, we have a lot of anticipation. People are excited to see when it comes out there. What type of future do you see with the NFT?
Oh, you mean like Subsquid NFT or like an
Oh
NFT in
yeah,
general?
yeah, Subsquid.
Subsquid NFTs are like really awesome. I had a glimpse because we our friends and SPY who created Donkey Kong collection. They're like really talented and like really awesome guys. And after I first saw the donkey on like a Twitter, I immediately said, "Oh, guy, I want them to make NFT for Subsquid." So I immediately texted them and tried to reach out, and yeah, that's right now like a long-lasting collaboration. I'm really happy, and like believe me, this Subsquid NFTs are like a real masterpieces in my opinion. They're really good.
Really cool. And then well, I guess that's about it. I see a lot of questions in here, but I'm not sure which ones we'll be able to get to here. They're pretty deeper. So I would say what we can do is, everybody that's been watching, thank you so much. And we want to do more events like this. We want to be able to get out, answer more questions, do dedicated videos, bring on our partners and some ambassadors, and be able to just create that live community of impact, encourage as many people to participate as possible. So
Yeah, sure.
Any last words?
Yeah, and definitely, I would be very happy to participate, and I believe that there will be also a lot of community calls in the future. This is something that we like discussed, so we will be even more inclusive and like more welcoming to our community members and ambassadors. So there will be not just like side fire chat, but actually like live streaming. This I think would be really amazing.
I love the idea of that. Well, I think we can shove about 100 people on this thing.
Oh yeah,
It would be a lot of fun.
that would be gutsy.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that. Well, Dmitry and everybody who's here, thank you so much for your time. Morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it might be. Bye for now, y'all.
Thanks a lot, Andy.